Aging is something that happens to each of us as time passes. And almost all cells of our body age, with rare exceptions. First of all, of course, it is the skin, but in addition to external manifestations, it is also a lot of internal problems and not ailments. And if few people care about it in their youth, then after 50 it becomes relevant for almost everyone. And what factor influences our aging? One of the most significant factors is our nutrition. We are what we eat. And, unfortunately, many foods from our diet really contribute to our accelerated aging. This has been proven by many studies. In this video, I have collected those foods that contribute to our aging and which should certainly be excluded from our diet if we want to prolong our youth. So watch the video to the end, it will be very interesting and useful. French fries, or chips, or whatever is deep-fried, fried butter. And this is generally speaking a killer thing. And again, we will plant many other organs, but since in this video we are talking about the processes of premature aging, I will still focus on it. In products that are deep-fried in oil, at high temperature, especially if this oil does not change for a long time. Generally speaking, it is absolutely impossible to fry twice in the same oil. But if we buy French fries, or some chips, you can be sure that the oil does not change every time there. It would be too wasteful for these fast foods and manufacturers. So, as a result of excessive heat treatment of the same oil, an exorbitant amount of trans fats, glycidyl esters and free radicals is formed. As a result, this trinity affects our molecules at the DNA level, which is extremely detrimental to our skin, including. Moreover, French fries and chips contain a huge amount of salt, which is also extremely harmful to our skin and causes its premature aging. And by the way, due to excessive salt intake, the skin is covered with wrinkles much earlier. And therefore, instead of French fries, it's better to eat just potatoes. And then we move on to the next point, this is of course white sugar. It is impossible not to say about him in the video about aging at all. And refined white sugar is one of those products that causes the biggest and most obvious problems. As I have already said, it promotes the formation of the end products of glycation, CNG, and this in turn destroys collagen in our body. And if we consume too much sugar, then the aging process is noticeably accelerated. Let's move on. The next item is trans fats and margarine. I decided to combine them together. There were even separate studies that showed that those people who consume large amounts of margarine have more wrinkles. And margarine is much worse than ordinary butter, for example, because margarine is essentially hydrogenated butter, it is trans fat. Only lazy people did not talk about the harm of trans fats. They are extremely harmful to our body, they provoke cardiovascular diseases, and provoke obesity, and are deposited in the body and stored in it for up to 50 days. And spenders also provoke oncology. And there is also one very bad combination, these are trans fats together with sugar. In particular, why, for example, is a burger considered unhealthy food? But because it contains the items I have already mentioned, white bread and a cutlet of unknown origin. As a rule, the cutlet in burgers has a distant relation to meat. The meat content there will be 10%, there will be a fair share of trans fats, there will be a fair share of glycidyl esters, and in total, in addition to carcinogenicity and harm to the cardiovascular system, this will of course cause premature aging. Moreover, another property has been proven, the use of trans fats makes our skin more vulnerable to ultraviolet radiation. In general, we know that a lot of sun is not very good for our skin, but if we consume trans fats, the harm is significantly increased. So lying on the beach and eating delicious ice cream is certainly a nice form of leisure, but either give up ice cream, or at least step back into the shade. White bread. The thing is that when refined sugars combine with protein, the so-called CNG, or end products of glycation, are formed. And these substances accelerate the aging process and aggravate chronic diseases. Of course, I understand that many of us are used to eating white bread, but it's not for nothing that nutritionists have been saying lately that not only salt is white death, but in general there have already been 3 white deaths. It's salt, it's refined white sugar and it's flour. Well, I mean all flour. And white bread has a high glycemic index. But if you really like bread, then there is good news, you can replace it with sprouted grain bread. This is the bread in which sugar is not added, and it also contains antioxidants that are useful for our body. So don't get me wrong, I'm not an opponent of bread, I'm an opponent of bread with added sugar. The next point is very controversial, these are dairy products. Here I must say the discussions do not subside. Some studies show their absolute safety, or vice versa benefits for our body, other studies show that not everything is so rosy and recommend limiting dairy products. Also at the level of personal experience, some people completely refuse milk and experience a lot of positive effects. They may have some chronic diseases, and in the context of our theme of the video, the skin may also start to look healthier and younger in just a couple of weeks. But for some people who refuse milk, no positive changes occur. So there is really a complicated thing here, people's personal experience is very contradictory and the research of specialists is also very contradictory. But nevertheless, it makes sense to try, maybe you will be among those whose body will react well to it. Ultimately, we are all very individual. So, the thing is that when milk is produced on an industrial scale, 75% of cows are pregnant. And this is not very healthy, because a pregnant cow secretes estrogen milk. It is not recommended to use such milk for people. And don't even have to think, what if I maybe buy some quality milk and there will be no estrogen in it? In fact, a huge number of cows are on the farm and all their milk is then drained into one vat, so all this is mixed and therefore almost all the milk in the supermarket bags will be estrogen. By the way, in this regard, there is a recommendation to use fermented milk products, because in the production process this negative factor is leveled and therefore it is preferable to use cottage cheese or cheese than fresh milk. But in addition to this, there is also such a thing as lactose. Humanity has domesticated a cow relatively recently and therefore evolutionarily our body is not yet prepared for the normal assimilation of lactose and therefore most adults do not digest it. When they drink milk they experience indigestion. In general, according to the sum of all these factors, in some people who consume dairy products, the processes of permanent microinflammations are intensified and this leads to oxidative stress, which is the main cause of premature aging both inside and outside. But there is one definite life hack here, if you really like milk, then I recommend you to try vegetable milk. This is a relatively new phenomenon, but it is considered, by the way, an even healthier alternative. Of course, from a formal point of view, this is not really milk, well, because plants do not give milk, mammalian animals give milk. But sometimes it tastes even tastier. There is rice milk, there is almond milk. Like and subscribe to my channel.